What's been interesting, like to put it mildly, because I have this medical body, but then I'm given a medication that dulls that pleasure with no thought at all. The consequence is I'm losing one of the main things I can get out of my body that's pleasurable.
Before we get into it, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that this video series was filmed on the stolen lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Greater Kulin Nation. Just a heads up, the following video series contains content that may be distressing for some. Welcome back to Getting Into It. This video, our final video, is about trust and respect. My name is Dr. Lena Molnar. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a gender-based violence prevention expert.
And I'm Hattie McCullough. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm an expert in sexual and reproductive health promotion, and I'm really excited to be talking about this topic.
Why are trust and respect important when we have conversations around sexual pleasure with women and gender diverse people with disabilities?
Well, sexual pleasure and pleasure in general doesn't really get talked about a lot, and there's a lot of shame and stigma around it. And it can be really difficult for people to feel like they can open up and share something which might be potentially quite vulnerable, and to someone that they don't know or don't have a relationship with, which is why it's so important to spend time developing a relationship and embedding trust and respect in that relationship.
What would be the first thing I would want to consider in developing a trustworthy relationship with my client?
There's many things you can do to improve your practice. So it's really important to have trauma-informed care as the basis of your practice.
How can I know when trauma is going to come up in relation to the care that I'm offering in service?
You don't know when it's going to come up. That's why it's so important to be prepared for it, because it can come up at any moment, which is why we practice a consent-based model, which informs the patient and client of what's going to happen before it happens, so they have a chance to respond, prepare, and let you know if they're experiencing any trauma symptoms.
Healthcare providers can do lots of easy things that can open the door to us as women and gender diverse people with disabilities. You can say things on your website like you're neurodiversity affirming. You can put flags on the window, but you must follow through when we walk through the door. I think this is the same with everything. Like, keep following up, acknowledge that things change. So if you asked me about my access needs once, or you asked me about my gender and sexuality and my pronouns once, keep the conversation open for me to give you updates. If I see you once every 6 months, you might even ask like, do you have any updates with regards to your access needs and your identities and your pronouns?
When I know that this is a huge aspect in so many women and gender diverse people with disabilities' lives, should I be worried about making things worse by opening up a conversation that they might not be prepared for?
Well, that's why we start off with open, curious conversations like we talked about in last episode, and you let your patient and client's boundaries guide the conversation.
What about my boundaries as a practitioner?
That's something to keep in mind as well, because you can't practice from a place that you don't feel comfortable in, or that's going to be traumatizing for yourself as well. So you can let them know as part of your introduction with the topic. You can say, I would really like to talk about sex and sexuality and pleasure with you, but I don't have the capacity or I'm not qualified to talk about sexual trauma, for instance, but I can refer you on to a colleague who is excellent in that area.
Especially if you know that there are certain things that you're really good at, or types of conversations that you've had a lot of practice in, but you're still developing your expertise or you're getting professional development. There are resources out there and other peak body organisations that you can connect with.
And that includes Aboriginal-led organisations. It also includes trans and gender diverse-led organisations and queer-led organisations as well. Because you're not meant to be an expert in everything, but you are creating an opportunity to find out what your patient or client needs.
As a practitioner, I'm likely to come into contact with women and gender diverse people with disabilities who may or may not be comfortable telling me about their sexual history. Are there simple, practical things that will let a new client know that I respect them?
And there's so many ways that you can do this, making sure that you have interpreters or Auslan interpreters available for people when they need to use them, embedding consent practices in your everyday practice, whether it's something simple like taking blood pressure, for instance, making sure you communicate what you're going to be doing before it happens, asking if it's okay if they roll up their sleeve or take off their jacket or whatever needs to be done, but really taking that time to really show them that you are not going to be just doing things to your patients and clients without them understanding or accepting what's happening.
It's really important for doctors to actually ask consent, and not just ask it, but make sure the person actually feels it, because often when you're in that situation as a patient, you don't have the power. The doctor has the power. So it's hard to say, oh no, you would just automatically probably say yes to something, even if you're uncomfortable, and you're just expected to be uncomfortable even if you don't want to.
It's probably affected me most in doctor's appointments. Consent has been so prevalent in my life in those sort of experiences. I think a lot of doctors assume that you'll just automatically say yes. Do you want a medical student in your room? No. And often that comes with surprise. It's so important, especially when people look in and don't understand you, to be able to say, no, I'm not going to educate you just because I have this experience. That's not my responsibility. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of practice, but I think it's so important to be able to say that and stand up to what makes you comfortable. As a gender fluid and disabled person, I think that helps me survive.
A lot of the experts that speak in this video talk about the ways that their bodies have been treated with disrespect, and how building trust in practice with professionals can make a world of difference for their health, and for how they feel about going into new relationships.
100%. And I think that really ties in with the trauma-informed care approach as well, because part of that is understanding the harm and trauma that has been caused by the medical system for women and gender diverse people with disabilities. And really, when you acknowledge that and make efforts to counteract that in your practice and really let the patient and client know, they can start to repair whatever damage has happened, an open pathway for a new relationship.
Yeah, probably the role of professionals would be to consolidate information, because you can look for information on the internet. Obviously, you may not be accessing the right stuff, or you kind of might go down a rabbit hole. So I guess seeing a trusted professional, if they can consolidate this type of information, that's a really useful resource.
And again, reflecting on the limitations of your knowledge or what you can and can't deliver because of your area of expertise as a professional is really helpful, so that you can refer on to another practitioner who might be better skilled to support that person that you're working with, and also so that you're not feeling alone in your practice as well.
Definitely.
If anything you have heard in this video has brought up distressing feelings, please call 1-800-RESPECT. For more information or other resources, feel free to visit the Women with Disabilities Victoria website at wdv.org.au.